Okay, so at this station we're going to be doing reflections. So let's go ahead and look at the first one. It says point A was reflected over the x-axis to create point A prime. So we know we're reflecting across the x-axis, so we want to go ahead and identify that line of reflection. So here is my x-axis. We're going to go ahead and mark it some way. So this is going to be the line that I'm going to be reflecting over. So we have A, we flipped it over this line of reflection to get A prime. So we're going to go ahead and fill out the coordinates. This should be A and A prime. So here, we're going to start off by putting the coordinate for A. A was originally -2, -3. And then A prime is -2, 3. So then we're going to look at the x's and look at the y's. So let's go ahead and look at the x's. It was -2 and it's still -2. So x did not change. So x is the same. And then let's go ahead and look at the y's. So here we have -3 and 3. So y, however, became the opposite. Now, if you remember when we were learning this, we talked about the opposite. Whenever we're talking about the opposite, we're going to be using that negative symbol. Okay? Remember, negative doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a negative number, because if we look at it, it's not. It's a positive number. Negative just means the opposite. So when we write our rule, we're going to start off, of course, with xy, like always, changes to. And then we said x stayed the same, so we can just rewrite x. There's no change to that one. And then y became the opposite. So in front of the y, we're going to put our negative symbol to show that y became the opposite. Now let's go ahead and look at the next example. Point B was reflected over the y-axis to create point B prime. So we're going to go ahead and start off by identifying the y-axis. So the y-axis is this vertical axis right here. So we have B, and we're going to flip it over this line from here to here. Now there's two ways that we can flip it. We can either look at this point and count how many units between the line of reflection and this point. So this is 1, 2, 3 units. We can go 3 units in the opposite direction, and that'll be our reflected line. So 1, 2, 3. This would be B prime. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is if you prefer using patty paper. We're going to match up the edge of the patty paper here with the axis, the line of reflection, the axis that we're going to be reflecting over. So we're going to go ahead and plot point B, and then we're just going to get our patty paper and flip it over. So here we have B prime. So that's the same one that we marked. So there's two ways to do it. I would recommend lining the x-axis so that way you can match it up when you're going back and forth, you know, to line it up to this line again. So that way you can go and reflect that point. So let's go ahead and write the coordinates for B. So B was originally 3, 1. B prime is -3, 1. So we can go ahead and look at the x and the y again. So the x was 3. Here it's -3. So the x became the opposites. Remember, we're going to signify that using a negative. Now let's go ahead and look at the y. So the y was 1. It's still 1, so y remained the same. Y did not change at all. So we're going to go ahead and write our rule. So we start off with x, y changes to. X became the opposite, so we're going to put a -x. Y stayed the same, so there is no change to y. We just rewrite y. Now let's go ahead and look at the next examples. Here we have a full triangle, a full shape. Now again, just like how we did earlier, we are able to just focus on a single point. We don't need to reflect the whole entire shape. One, that saves us time. Two, that helps us from being confused and knowing exactly what we're looking at. So for this case, it asks us to look for D and D prime, but you can pick any figure, any one of the points that you want. So let's go ahead and look at D and D prime. So D was originally -1, -2. Then we got to flip it over. This time the line of reflection is the x-axis, so that'll be this line. So you can either right now reflect it by using your patty paper, or you can count. So I'm going to go ahead and count. So this is 1, 2 units away from the line of reflection. So I'm going to go 1, 2 units in the opposite direction to get D prime. So D prime is -1, 2. Let's go ahead and look at the x values. So I have -1 and it's still -1, so x stayed the same. And then let's go ahead and look at the y value. So it was -2 and now it's 2, so y became the opposite. It was -2, now it's +2. So we're going to signify that using a negative. So we're going to go ahead and write our rule. X comma y changes to, x stayed the same, y became the opposite. So we're going to put x remains the same, -y to represent it becoming the opposite. Now let's do the last one. If you haven't paused it before to try it on your own, you should be doing that with this last one, so that way you can make sure that you know what to do before you do your exit ticket. So this time we're going to be reflecting across the y-axis. So when we reflect across the y-axis, we're going to specifically be looking at point F and F prime. So let's go ahead and look at F. Here, the y-axis, this is the line of reflection. F is 1, 2 units away from that line of reflection, so let's go 2 in the opposite direction. This would be F prime. So F was originally 2, 4, and F prime is -2, 4. So let's go ahead and now we just need to focus on the coordinates. So let's look at x. It was 2, now it's -2. So x became the opposite. So we're going to signify that using the negative again. Y was 4, still 4, so y remained the same. So let's go ahead and write the rule for that one. X comma y changes to, x became the opposite, so -x. Y remained the same, so we just rewrite y.